The room was silent. Not a peaceful silence, the kind that presses on your chest. The kind that tells you something has already gone wrong. Marcus Aurelius sat alone in his military tent somewhere on the frozen banks of the Danube River, the year 170 AD. Outside, his empire was collapsing from 3 directions at once. The Germanic tribes had broken through the northern frontier. A plague was wiping out his legions. His generals were losing morale. His treasury was draining. And somewhere in the palace back in Rome, whispers of betrayal were beginning to grow louder. Any other man would have collapsed under the weight of it. But Marcus opened his journal, dipped his pen, and wrote something that has survived nearly 2,000 years. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He didn't write that from a place of comfort. He wrote it in the middle of the fire, because he had trained himself to protect something that no army, no plague, no betrayal could ever reach. His peace. And that is exactly what this video is about. Because in the world we live in right now, with constant noise, constant pressure, constant provocation, the man who knows how to never lose his peace is the most dangerous, most powerful, most unshakable man in any room. Let's build that man. If this is your first time here, welcome to Inner Steel, where we forge the mind, the character, and the discipline of men who refuse to break. Subscribe and stay. This is the content that actually changes you. Peace is not the absence of chaos, it is mastery over your response to it. Let's get something straight right now, because if you misunderstand what peace means, everything else in this video will miss the mark. Most men think peace means nothing is going wrong. They think peace is the calm Sunday morning, the quiet inbox, the absence of conflict, the season when life isn't attacking them. That is not peace. That is comfort. And comfort disappears the moment life decides to test you, which it always does. Real peace is something different entirely. Real peace is the capacity to remain grounded when everything around you is shaking. In 1940, Winston Churchill stood before a British nation that was genuinely losing. France had fallen. The Soviet Union had signed a pact with Hitler. The United States had not yet entered the war. Britain was alone, being bombed nightly, and every military advisor in the room was quietly calculating surrender. But Churchill had something no external circumstance could destroy, an internal center that refused to move. He wasn't performing calm, he was rooted in it. He slept well. He ate well. He painted during breaks in battle meetings. Not because the world was peaceful, but because he had trained an unshakable inner ground. He once told his staff, "When you cannot sleep, it is because you are trying to carry tomorrow's problems with today's energy. Leave tomorrow to tomorrow." That is a man who understood what peace actually is. The Stoics called it apatheia, not apathy as we misuse the word today, but the absence of being enslaved by emotion. Not the absence of feeling, but the absence of being controlled by feeling. Here's how you begin to build it. Every time something happens that would normally disturb you, a message, a loss, a failure, an insult, pause before you react. In that pause lives your freedom. In that pause, you choose whether the event runs you, or you run the event. The man who masters that pause masters his life. Stop giving people the power to disturb you. There is a specific kind of peace that men give away every single day without realizing it. They hand it over willingly, to coworkers who dismiss them, to women who ignore them, to social media comments that mean nothing, to family members who haven't changed in 20 years. Every time you let someone else's behavior determine your emotional state, you have surrendered your most valuable possession. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who was born into literal slavery, whose master broke his leg just to prove a point, who had absolutely nothing in the material sense, understood this better than almost anyone in human history. He said, "People are not disturbed by the things that happen to them. They are disturbed by their opinions about those things." Let that land. When your boss speaks to you with disrespect, it isn't his words that disturb you. It's your interpretation, that his words mean something about your value. When someone you love pulls away, it isn't their distance that breaks you. It's your story about what that distance means. Epictetus used to have his students carry a list of 2 columns everywhere they went. Column 1. What is in my control? Column 2. What is not in my control? Their entire Stoic practice was about ruthlessly choosing to only spend energy on column 1. Here's the exercise, and I want you to actually do this, not just file it away as a good idea. For the next 7 days, every time you feel your peace disturbed, ask one question. Is this person's behavior something I can control? The answer will always be no. The follow-up question is my response something I can control? The answer will always be yes. You are not a puppet. Stop letting other people pull your strings. The man who cannot be disturbed by the pettiness, cruelty, or carelessness of others is a man who operates at a level most people will never reach. Protect your morning and you protect the entire day. Most men walk into the chaos before they've even had a chance to become themselves. They wake up and immediately check their phone. And in that single act, which feels harmless, which feels like just checking, they hand the first hour of their day to everyone else in the world. Algorithms designed to provoke. News designed to alarm. Notifications designed to demand. By 7 a.m., the average man has already reacted to a dozen things that have nothing to do with his actual life. His nervous system is already spiked. His peace is already fractured. And he hasn't even had breakfast. Seneca wrote about this nearly 2,000 years ago. In one of his letters, he described the chaos of city life, the merchants shouting, the crowds pushing, the constant stimulation, and he warned that a man who cannot find morning stillness will never find himself at all. Begin the morning by saying to yourself, I shall meet today with the meddling, the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful, the envious, and the unsocial. They are such by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil. But I have seen the beauty of good, and the ugliness of evil, and I have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. And so none of them can injure me. That was Marcus Aurelius's actual morning routine. Not a gym selfie. Not scroll time. A deliberate mental preparation for the day ahead. Here's the principle: your morning is armor. Every quiet hour you carve out before the world floods in is another layer of protection for your peace. Journal. Pray. Meditate. Breathe. Read something that elevates your mind. Walk in silence. Whatever it looks like for you, protect it like it's the most important meeting of your day. Because it is. The man you are when you finally face the world should be a man who has already visited his own soul first. If you haven't built a morning practice yet, start with 10 minutes of silence before any screen. Just 10 minutes. That one habit, practiced without exception, will do more for your peace than almost anything else. Train yourself to expect difficulty, then nothing can shock you. One of the greatest peace thieves in a man's life is surprise. Not the good kind of surprise, the kind where life suddenly gets worse than you expected, and because you expected ease, the fall destroys you. Men who are easily broken are usually men who believed, somewhere deep down, that things were supposed to go their way. That relationships were supposed to last. That businesses were supposed to succeed. That people were supposed to be grateful. That effort was supposed to produce results in predictable timelines. Life has never worked that way. And it never will. The Stoics practiced something called negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Every morning, they would deliberately imagine what could go wrong that day. The client who cancels. The ally who turns cold. The plan that fails. The body that struggles. Not as pessimism. As preparation. There's a story told about the Spartan general Leonidas before the Battle of Thermopylae. He genuinely knew, that he and his 300 men were likely marching to their deaths. The Persian army was over 100,000 strong. There was no rational case for survival. But Leonidas did not lose his peace. He had already accepted the worst. And because the worst was already accepted, every hour he fought was a gift, not a debt. He is reported to have told his men the night before, "Eat well tonight, brothers. For tomorrow we dine in Hades." They laughed. Not because it wasn't true, but because a man who has faced death already cannot be shaken by the threat of it. You don't need to prepare for Thermopylae. But you do need to stop being blindsided by Tuesday. Expect the traffic. Expect the criticism. Expect the betrayal. Expect the setback. Not as doom, but as reality. And when those things come, as they will, you will meet them without flinching, because you have already walked through them in your mind. That is a man who cannot be rattled. Your environment is either building your peace or destroying it. The people around you are not neutral forces. They are either adding weight to your mind or helping clear it. And until a man is willing to honestly audit who and what he allows into his daily life, he will never understand why his peace keeps slipping away. In the early 1800s, there was a young writer in London named Samuel Taylor Coleridge, brilliant, gifted, full of potential. His contemporaries included Wordsworth and Byron and Keats, men who produced immortal work. Coleridge's tragedy was his circle. He surrounded himself with men who were either chaotic, dependent, or constantly in crisis. He spent his energy managing their dramas, absorbing their anxiety, trying to fix unfixable situations. By the time he was in his 30s, his peace was so shattered that he had turned to opium just to quiet the noise in his mind. He once wrote in his journal, "I have known what it is to feel the weight of another man's madness pressing on my own." That sentence should stop you cold. Because every man has people in his life who transfer their chaos into him. Some do it consciously. Most do it unconsciously. But the transfer happens regardless of intent. This isn't about cutting everyone off. It's about being intentional. It's about asking, does this person, after I spend time with them, leave me more centered or more scattered? More energized or more drained? More clear or more confused? The answer tells you everything about how much access they should have to your inner world. Your environment extends beyond people. It includes the content you consume, the spaces you inhabit, the sounds you allow into your life. A man who lives on rage-bait content will be a man full of rage. A man who watches hours of comparison and competition will be a man full of inadequacy. Build an environment that reflects the peace you want to carry. Then protect it. If this is speaking to something deep in you, that's inner steel doing its work. Subscribe to the channel. We put out content that goes where most won't. Hit the bell. Stay in the forge. Master the art of letting go before it poisons you. There is a kind of man who carries every wound he has ever received. Every betrayal, every failure, every moment of humiliation, stored, catalogued, replayed on a loop. And he calls this storage by many names. He calls it memory. He calls it motivation. He calls it being realistic. But what it actually is poison. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. 27 years on Robben Island, in a cell barely large enough to lie down, doing hard labor, stripped of every privilege of normal life. When he walked free in 1990, the world watched to see what kind of man emerged. A bitter man would have been understandable. A violent man would have been forgivable. A man consumed by rage after 27 years of injustice would have made complete logical sense. But Mandela walked out with his peace intact. He was asked many years later how he had done it. How had he survived prison without losing himself? His answer was quiet and direct. As I walked out the door toward my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I would still be in prison. Read that again. He understood something that takes most men a lifetime to grasp. You can be wronged and still choose to be free. The person who hurt you does not deserve to live rent-free in your mind for the next 10 years. Your bitterness does not punish them. It punishes you. Letting go is not weakness. Letting go is not saying what happened was acceptable. Letting go is choosing your own peace over the endless re-injury of replaying what cannot be changed. The Stoic practice here is direct. Whenever you feel yourself gripping something from the past, ask, is holding this helping me build the man I want to become? If the answer is no, and it almost always is, you release it. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've chosen freedom over the familiar comfort of grievance. Silence is a weapon and a shield. Somewhere along the way, the world convinced men that they need to respond to everything. That silence is submission. That not reacting is losing. That the man who says nothing must have nothing. The opposite is true. In ancient Japan, there was a Zen master named Bankei who became famous not for his speeches but for the quality of his silence. Students would come from across the country to sit in his presence. Not to hear him talk. Just to be near a man who had nothing left to prove. One afternoon, a young samurai arrived in his hall, furious, chest out, sword at his side, and demanded that Bankei engage him. He called the master a fraud. An old fool. He insulted his lineage, his temple, his students. The room went rigid with tension. Bankei simply looked at him. Long, unhurried, untroubled. Then he said, "You seem very anxious to be taken seriously. Why does a man who is truly powerful need the acknowledgement of a tired old monk?" The samurai had no answer. He left quietly. That is what silence does. It reveals the other person's need while protecting your own center. It refuses to give chaos something to grip. The next time someone tries to provoke you, at work, at home, online, try the following. Say nothing for 5 full seconds. 5 seconds of silence when someone expects a reaction. In those 5 seconds, you reclaim your power. You deny them the response they came for. And your peace remains yours. Silence is the answer most situations don't deserve and the one that protects you the best. The man who can remain silent in the face of provocation is not a passive man. He is a disciplined one. There is a massive difference. Your body is the first battlefield. Win there first. We talk about peace as if it's purely a mental or spiritual phenomenon. And while the mind is where it ultimately lives, most men are actively destroying their peace through the physical choices they make every single day. Sleep deprivation alone can turn the most grounded man into someone reactive, irritable, and incapable of clear thought. Poor nutrition spikes cortisol, the stress hormone, to levels that make emotional regulation nearly impossible. A sedentary lifestyle creates stagnant energy that has nowhere to go except inward, where it curdles into anxiety and restlessness. Theodore Roosevelt was not born a calm, steady man. By his own description, as a child and young adult he was sickly, hyperactive, prone to anxiety attacks, and full of nervous energy that he didn't know how to manage. His father once told him directly, "Theodore, you have the mind. But you must make the body." Roosevelt took that instruction as a mandate. He began boxing. He swam in icy rivers. He hiked mountains and rode horses and wrestled and lifted. Not for aesthetics. For something deeper. For the right to stand inside his own body without being enslaved by it. Later in life, when he faced genuine political attacks, personal tragedies, public humiliations that would have leveled most men, he was asked how he kept his composure. His answer was always rooted in the physical. "I exercise vigorously every single day. It is not optional. A man who does not command his body will never command his mind." This is not motivation poster thinking. This is physiology. When you move your body, when you push it, challenge it, train it, you change the chemistry of your brain. You lower cortisol. You raise dopamine and serotonin. You create a body that is no longer a source of anxiety but a source of stability. Build the physical practice. Sleep without compromise. Eat to fuel, not to numb. Train with consistency, not performance. The peace you're looking for has a physical address, and it starts in the body you're living in. A man with purpose cannot be easily disturbed. Here is something very few people will tell you plainly. A lot of the chaos that steals men's peace comes from the fact that they don't know what they're building. When a man doesn't have a clear direction, a mission, a purpose, a non-negotiable reason to rise, he becomes dangerously available to every distraction, every drama, every provocation that crosses his path. Because there's nothing more important calling him forward. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist who was captured by the Nazis in 1942 and sent to concentration camps, including Auschwitz. He watched men die not just from physical brutality, but from something that preceded physical death, the collapse of inner meaning. Frankl noticed something extraordinary. The men who survived longest, not always physically, but psychologically, were the men who had something they were holding on to. A wife waiting for them. A book they hadn't finished writing. A child they needed to return to. A mission that could not be completed if they gave up. He wrote afterward, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." That is the most important sentence about peace ever written. When you have a why that runs deeper than your comfort, deeper than your feelings, deeper than what others think of you, the small provocations of daily life lose their power. The insult from a colleague bounces off. The setback in business becomes data, not disaster. The rejection from someone you wanted becomes redirection towards someone better. Because none of those things threaten what truly matters to you. If you don't have a clear purpose right now, start there. Before morning routines. Before discipline hacks. Before any of the other tools in this video. Ask yourself the question Frankl asked his patients. If tomorrow I could not fail, what would I be building? That answer is the seed of your purpose. Plant it. Water it. Let everything else in your life be organized around it. The man with purpose doesn't need the world's approval. He doesn't need everyone to like him. He doesn't need every circumstance to cooperate. He needs only to keep moving in the direction that matters. That is a man at peace. Peace is a practice, not a destination. The last lesson. The one that ties everything else together. Men make a fatal error when they treat peace as something they'll eventually arrive at. When this is done, when this relationship stabilizes, when this business finally works, when things calm down, then I'll have peace. That day never comes. Because life does not pause while you're getting ready for it. Thich Nhat Hanh, one of the greatest peace teachers of the 20th century, spent his life in the middle of war, exile, and persecution. He was expelled from Vietnam during the war. He watched his monasteries destroyed. He spent decades in political exile, unable to return to his homeland. And yet people who met him, journalists, diplomats, activists, world leaders, all reported the same thing: they had never been in the presence of a man so completely at peace. He was once asked during an interview in the 1990s how he could appear so calm given everything he had endured. His answer was both simple and devastating. I do not wait for peace. I practice it. Every step I take is a step of peace. Every breath I take is a breath of peace. If I wait until conditions are right, I will wait forever. Every step. Every breath. Peace as a daily act, not a final destination. This changes everything about how you approach it. You don't earn peace when you succeed. You practice peace in the process of building success. You don't find peace when the conflict ends. You cultivate peace in the middle of the conflict. How? Through every principle in this video, practice daily. You pause before you react. You protect your mornings. You train your body. You release what you cannot change. You clarify your purpose. You guard who you let in. You choose silence when noise would cost you. You prepare for difficulty so it cannot break you. None of these are things you do once. All of them are things you do every day. Some days you'll do them well. Other days you'll fail and let something steal your peace. That's not defeat, that's the practice. The only men who truly never lose their peace are the ones who keep returning to it, every single day, without apology and without exception. Closing. Marcus Aurelius wrote his journal in the dark, on the front lines of a crumbling empire, and he never intended anyone to read it. It was his daily practice of returning to himself. Of choosing his inner world over outer chaos. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That retreat is available to you right now. Not when the problems are solved. Not when the people in your life change. Not when the world gets easier. Now. In this moment. With this breath. In this decision to stop letting the outside world dictate the condition of your inside world. You don't find peace. You build it. You protect it. You practice it every single day, until it becomes not something you seek but something you are. That is inner steel. That is who you are becoming. If this hits something real inside you, subscribe to Inner Steel right now. Every video we make is designed to forge a better, sharper, more unbreakable version of you. Hit that subscribe button. Share this with a man who needs it. And I'll see you in the next one. Stay hard. Stay still. Never lose your peace.